Howdy, folks! Happy Monday! And as I predicted, X shows up right as we press live. We are the show here, and we'll go right to Russ with the pre-show.
Okay. First thing is, and this is always the desperate Father's Day. Hey, always got some gift options. Go to my Amazon page, baseball, hockey,
Or
hey, listen, Jacob deGrom, he's in this book. So is Ohtani. They're pretty good players. All right, anyhow. So Nikola Jokic, who got kicked out of a game the other day, we always talk about how hockey now has become less violent and football is touch football, which is not true because guys still get killed. Well, now it is ported over to the NBA because a play that Jokic made the other day, and he's a big guy. He won the MVP. He's got long arms. He just basically slapped the ball away from a smaller player, which everybody does on defense who's ever played basketball. Ball goes out of bounds. They kicked him out of that game for a flagrant because they said the backlash of his arm hit the guy's face, so they kicked him out. But Jokic was right. He got all ball. And back in the day, not even that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, that would have been called all ball. But now the guy gets kicked out of the game. So, Kev, it's even come to basketball now.
Yeah, it has. It's funny that all ball distinction was a schoolyard thing. When you were a kid, I got all ball. Yeah,
that's it. And he wouldn't get a foul as a result.
Right. You hear that in soccer all the time too.
Right. In soccer, and the slide tackles and things like that.
Yeah, I got all ball. Yeah,
which also kind of plays into like the hockey players too, when they slide across with their stick and they get the puck, with their stick, and they don't trip the guy, but they get the puck, but the guy trips over him, but I got the puck. That I've heard that used in hockey.
You would be surprised how many people in hockey think that isn't a foul. Right.
That
if regardless if they trip the guy afterward, like as long as you get the puck, whatever you do to the guy is fine.
Which I think is a carryover from the other sports, and I honestly think that is a soccer and basketball thing. I think that it feels like to me that's what they've kind of taken from there.
But no hockey player who blocks a shot ever says, "I got all puck."
No, they never do. I've never heard that.
Just to maintain my my reputation as being miserable, Mike.
You don't have to, Mike, but that's fine.
If you're disgruntled, remember we decided that's such a more polite word.
Yes, you do that on a daily basis. But go ahead.
So I purchased a fair bit of change to go see the Yankees play the Toronto Blue Jays tomorrow in Buffalo. The first game that the Yankees play in front of fans in Buffalo, and that probably will never happen again after this series because they'll probably go up to Toronto in August when the border opens or soon after. So it's a unique experience.
Yeah.
And on Saturday, after Saturday's game in Philadelphia, Aaron Judge, who is their best player, was shut down with back spasms. So more than likely, he won't play in Toronto. He won't play against Toronto tomorrow night in Buffalo. And to put a cherry on top of the Sunday, it was Garrett Cole's turn in the rotation. But since they had they wanted to give an extra day off. So now Jordan Montgomery is going to pitch for the Yankees. He's a lefty, and you've got a murderer's row of righties, including Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. So I'm preparing for like a 12-1 Blue Jays threat.
Well, Mike, the good news is that Giancarlo Stanton will probably play because he couldn't play yesterday because he couldn't play in the field, but there he could at least DH. So.
Yeah, because if he plays in the field, he'll pull a quad like he normally does.
Oh, poor guy. That's why I like National League Baseball, because if you can't play in the field, you can play in that other league, then something's wrong.
I'm going to tie baseball into hockey today at some point.
I'm sympathetic to Mike about the Aaron Judge things because everybody knows that nobody ever gets hurt in baseball.
And Mike, I mean, the Maple Leafs can't win.
No,
just pretend the Blue Jays are the Leafs. You get to cheer Toronto.
Okay, don't even go there. The other thing, as I was before, I was so rudely interrupted. The music situation. I just heard that Eric Clapton will be touring this summer, And
man.
I really see. This is the thing. Luckily I saw Eric Clapton back in the day, so I don't have to go out and see him for an exorbitant price. But I really have a problem now with these acts that are coming out when they're well past their spoil date. And Genesis is touring next year, and I saw Genesis in the 80s. They were great then.
Now you sound like an old man, Mike.
No, but
because I remember when I was a kid.
I expect them to be at the top of their.
Here's the thing: when I was a kid, I remember wanting to go see Genesis, and my cousin, who was like 10 years older than me, said, I saw Genesis with Gabriel. I mean, this is stupid. Like this is in the 1980s, like, so there's always that thing of people saying, oh, I saw Pink Floyd.
I will back this up what Eck is saying, because I don't remember the year exactly. Maybe it was like 84, 85. And I'm sending away this is when you had to send postcards for concerts. I was doing it for the Who, and I was doing it for the Stones, which was supposed to be their final tour back then, because everybody figured out, like, mid-'80s, there's no way these guys are living any longer. They've done so many drugs. And so this is like everybody's last tour. Now we're like in, 2021, and it's still not everybody's last tour. So Mike's mad.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those guys, because I do I saw the Rolling Stones on the small venue tour.
Okay.
So I saw them in the Sonic Auditorium in Detroit, which holds about 4,000. So
wow.
I can throw something out there if you guys want to. I saw Nirvana at the Khyber Pass in Philadelphia, which seats about 70 people.
I did see Green Day in Philly at a place that probably nobody was sitting, at a place that probably stood 100.
Yeah, no, the Khyber's.
That was only a few years ago.
Nobody sits at the Khyber
either.
So nobody sits at the Khyber either. I was in college, and a friend of mine was like into all the cooler music than I was, and he knew, like, and he's like, yes, band from Seattle, they're really cool. They're touring, and no one's going to go see them. But a friend of mine knows somebody in the band. He says, he gave me tickets, so let's go down and see him, because there's not going to be anybody there. So go down to the Khyber Pass, which is Kevin. Now Kevin saw my band play at the Tin Angel. The Khyber Pass was right next door, and it's a similar kind of place that you saw me play in. And so I go into the Khyber Pass at that point, and that music, the 90s, Nirvana was so different than anything else anybody had heard. Like, when at that point, Nirvana was just changing everything. And they were phenomenal. It was unbelievable. Like, I literally left there thinking to myself that I just saw.
So this was before Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got to say that the Khyber Pass might be the coolest name I've ever heard. It sounds like a Tyrone Power movie.
Oh, is it? That's what that is.
Saudi Arabia or something. But the Khyber Pass, what a great
cool club name. It was a real dive. I mean, it was like a real.
That room's getting antsy. We better get started.
All right, let's go.
The Khyber Pass is an actual name of a pass in Pakistan, so that's where they come from.
That room's complaining as much as Mike now.
No, too bad.
All right, let's go. We got some things to talk about. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, June 14th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm pissed off.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen.
I'm Kevin Nice, and I write about the Habs on HockeyBuzz.
We'll get Karen, and then Kevin, and then we're good. Okay, so and that's Kevin, and that's Karen, and this is I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And yesterday I got the real treat of watching a little bit of that game on the beach. Like, I brought my laptop out with my buddy, and we sat there on the beach and watched it on the beach. It was pretty fun. So
how do you get past the sun glare, though?
Well, it's funny. Yeah, you do have to, like, I have a gazebo, of course. I set up a gazebo.
Oh, okay.
I'm one of those
you
dads.
weren't on the beach physically. You were in a gazebo.
Well, no, I was on the beach. I set up a gazebo on the beach. Like, I'm one of those dads that brings down, like I have the whole freaking 9 yards. Believe me, it's a setup. So
when a gust of wind comes and blows the gazebo out.
No, we bury the gazebo. But anyway, so it was. But that game yesterday was really, I thought, pretty interesting, and kind of going along the lines of where I thought this might go. And like I said last week, I said if the Islanders were going to win, they were going to have the series. They were going to have to win Game 1. And I thought this was definitely set it up now. Now, I've heard a lot of people today who have a different impression of that. It felt like Tampa didn't show up for the game. I I mean, it's amazing how little love the Islanders are getting for winning that game. In my mind, like as far as when you disagree with me, Russ?
I disagree. Listen, it was Brian Boucher, who's been covering every series practically, who said on the ice, "Hey, Tampa doesn't look like Tampa," and even the coach John Cooper said after the game they were not themselves. So I do give the Islanders credit for shutting them down, Nick. But if you don't think Tampa played like their C game, you're crazy. Now they did finally start playing better mid-third period, no question about it.
But if you don't know the Islanders, I mean, Russ, we've seen the Islanders play plenty of times. The Islanders make you look like you're playing your C game a lot.
To a degree. Max effort, solid goaltending, but the turnovers, the Islanders were not causing all those turnovers. If you saw the Sergachev turnovers that they showed the package, the Islanders weren't even near him. He was just no-look passing turnovers. He was just lazy turnovers.
I mean, the Stamkos one was great.
Oh, yeah, and that's why he got benched. Yeah.
Well, I got two things. One, Kevin said on a previous show that Vasilevsky really hadn't been that good through the playoffs, through the first two rounds. He'd been up and down. And I agreed with that assessment. And it came to pass in game one. I'm sorry. I don't care if the guy shoots 100 miles an hour. The Brian Pulak shot that made it 2-0 was a clear shot. Nobody in between. 9,999 out of 10,000. The goaltender has got to stop that puck.
I mean, if you move a fraction of the inch, that goes in. I don't kill him on that goal because
what about the 10 great saves he made while it was 0-0? I mean, he was pretty incredible.
Right. I don't kill Vasilevsky on the Pulak shot because few have that kind of shot.
The other point I was going to make is the Islanders played a nearly perfect road game. Perfect. At 2-0. And then I think in the last 4 minutes of the third period, desperation set in, and you saw Tampa really start to pick it up, and then they got the goal to make it 2-1. They played a nearly perfect road game, and they won 2-1. So I think it was a grade A effort from the Islanders and a grade B or C effort from Tampa Bay. You can't expect them to have a grade A effort and a grade C effort from those two teams throughout the series.
The Islanders are like the Devils. And
to be fair, though, I think that the Tampa Bay started really well. Like the first 5 minutes, they were leading 7-1 in shots.
I thought so.
But the Islanders kind of weathered that storm, and that got to Tampa Bay, and that got to the crowd as well, quieted down.
You can't say
I think it's the Islanders there that managed to put Tampa Bay on their heels a little bit, like, oh, what is this, opposition? How's that possible? That's what it looked like to me.
I think their defense did do that to a degree. You're right. There's no question about that.
Kevin, I mean, there's my thing I'm thinking on this, because I'm going to bring Kevin into this. I
agree with Creepy Rob stuff.
Well, no, I'm not.
Here's the situation, okay? Parents went away on a week's vacation. No, this is the deal. The Islanders are not going to win games 5-1. Like, this is not a team that does that. The Devils, when they were winning Stanley Cups, they won 2-1. They won. Those teams, the Islanders and Devils, like from way back when, they just win. It doesn't matter how much they win by. They don't care. Kevin, thoughts?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we always go through this, not just in hockey, but in all sports, where, a team that loses can't ever admit that the other team played well. It's what they didn't do, not what the other team did to them. And we see that for sure in the Montreal series, where, no one wants to say, well, Montreal just did a really good job of shutting down two good offensive teams. Instead, they want to say, look at the failure of the Edmonton Oilers, or look at the failure of the Winnipeg Jets. So that's just part and parcel of the sport. Right. And always the truth is in the middle. Like, you're absolutely right. The Islanders played, and Mike is right, just a terrific game. And they've got, maybe the hottest player still left in the playoffs in Barzal, who's really
and nobody's going to discredit Matt Barzal. I mean, he made Vasilevsky look bad.
Yeah, he's got, he's got 4 goals in his last 5 games, and he's
on fire.
Yeah, he's playing very, very well. And in a series like this where it's so tight, and they're already hauling out the cliches. I mean, what did the players say after? There's no room out there. Why is there never any room in the playoffs, and there's always plenty of room in the regular season? So, but there's no room out there. So we can't.
Braden Point did find some room a couple times, so he's another one of those speed guys. So you make a good point, Kev.
But the bottom line is like the Islanders played really, really well. I loved Cooper's assessment of, we're a team that has a recipe and we didn't follow it. And I think that's true. I mean, whoever just called it, I think it was Russ called it, I wouldn't say it was C. I would say the Tampa Bay was a B- game. And the Islanders played their A game. Yeah. And they were really good at it. And this is, we all of us agree that the Islanders are going to give them trouble. But I also, how I feel about that. I always discount game one. It seems like it doesn't really matter who wins that game. Series doesn't get going until game two. So we'll see what happens.
I would say this is the true test. Find me an Islander fan that said they weren't nervous after Tampa did score and had time left on the clock and was still getting shots with the extra man advantage. If you could find me one of those,
if you don't think that Tampa's gonna make a run at you, you're ridiculous. Like,
no, but I'm just saying.
Of course they're nervous. Of course, I mean, this is a hell of a team. These are the Stanley Cup champions. They are going to come at you at some point. They're going to attack you, and you're going to be nervous. But the reality is, you have to either get a big enough lead or be confident enough that you can hold them back. And I think, honestly, to me, I felt like Cooper and all that, they were making excuses and they sounded scared to me. Like, I honestly, when I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him talk, and I never felt this way about Cooper ever before, but when you say your team played really, well, we just didn't do our thing, are you saying that because you're trying to tell your team that they just didn't do their thing and that the other team isn't as good as you think they are? Because to me, that's what it felt like. Does that make any sense?
No, it did to me. I heard the entire Cooper press conference, and he was very laudatory of the Islanders.
He was.
And he wasn't sending a message. I think he gave an honest assessment.
He's pretty honest. I will say that.
I've heard him a lot, and I know him, and I thought he was just being honest. He thought the Islanders were very good, but he thought they could have been better.
I think there's mutual respect there. Remember, these two teams played against each other last year.
I'm not saying he's not respecting him. I'm saying he's maybe over-respecting the Islanders in a way to sit there and say.
I think that was made pretty clear after the first whistle when David Savard, I think Matt Martin went at it. There was a scrum. No, I think
that was the point that I had brought up, Mike. That Cooper was going to make an immediate assessment on that game one to kind of thwart that, and he did that. To his credit, he did that.
Corinne was right. The way the first period played out, Tampa had that initial rush in like the first 4 or 5 minutes where the shots were 7-1. And then the Islanders really took over and Vasilevsky stood on his head to keep it 0-0. But again, I go back to that goal. I mean, 1-0 is one thing, especially for an experienced team to be able to come back from in a playoff situation. But the goal that Pulock scored, a wide open shot from the point.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't care if it's 100 miles an hour. It's Vasilevsky. I'm not the one who has to stop the damn puck. It's Vasilevsky. He's the best goalie in the league.
But again, you move a half a second late on a 100-mile-an-hour shot, and it's going to tip off the inside of your pad. It is.
This is the National Hockey League. I'm with Mike on this.
Okay.
It's like the great Harry Sinden always said, you don't pay goalies to make easy saves. You pay them to make the hard saves. That's why they get paid a lot of money. And
do we say that about field goal kickers too? I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, they don't pay kickers the way they do.
Okay, that's fair.
That's true too.
So, but I thought he should have made that stop too. You know what I mean? That at this stage, he would have made that save last year on the run to the cup.
Right, and he would probably make that save 9 times out of 10 in any game now too. But the reality is, if you haven't scored all game and you're up 1-0, you put yourself in a position for something like that to happen. And if that happens,
no question about that. That's true.
And at that point, if that happens, you can't sit there and blame Vasilevsky on it. Like because he had made great saves throughout the game, and that's just the reality. Is you lost
him 2 goals. He's got a 9
goals, and that save he made very early on that when he goes across, man, that was a hell of a save.
This doesn't quite fit here, but if I don't talk about it now, we'll forget. And I wanted to bring it up because I wondered how wrong I was on this. When I heard Dougie Hamilton say, well, we lost to a team that has $98 million worth of payments, I just kind of rolled my eyes and, somebody they lost But in the last week or however long it's been, I've run into a lot of people around the hockey world who are really bothered by that. Like to the point where we may see changes.
I've been saying it.
No,
Yeah.
I listen.
I was hearing people say the same thing, Kevin. Like, I was of course talking to people in Florida who were obviously upset about it too, but there was a lot of other people who were just like, yeah,
I get that, but Kev, you're trying to tell me there's no other team in the league that would have done the same thing under the same conditions?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. I think everybody.
Right. Well, that's my issue with it.
It just points out though that there's kind of a flaw, like it's a real disadvantage. Like I was talking to somebody who pointed out, like that, $18 million is 2 top level players.
Well, I would find it hard to believe that both the PA and the league would be on the same page to agree to an adjustment of the CBA on that, Kev. I mean, unless they're talking about putting a cap of how much over the cap you can be in the playoffs or something like that. I mean, the cap doesn't count in the playoffs. That's the whole.
Why doesn't it count?
No, it doesn't. But I find that I'm hearing that the players themselves are upset over this.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean,
that's why I want it. I see it as a possibility. Now, you are right. I don't know. I could just see the Players Association said next time we have a CBA, we can bargain it. So
yeah.
They could say that, but if there were enough players who were upset about it, I'm sure it'll be talked about. If Doug Hamilton went to the summer meetings or whatever they're called now and raised that issue, and then there was enough support for it, they might do that. So
can anybody tell me why it doesn't pertain?
Can
anybody tell me why it doesn't pertain to the playoffs? Does anybody have any idea why the salary cap doesn't pertain to the playoffs?
Because salaries don't count for the playoffs.
Right.
That doesn't matter. I mean, it's still.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
The whole point of the long-time injured reserve is that if you've got someone who's not there for the season, you can have the exact same amount of cash to build your team as everyone else because that player is not going to be used.
Right.
So the only fair way to fix that would be to say, okay, when you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you choose which players you eliminate from your roster. If Kucherov comes on that, fine, but you take someone else out.
But
that would be fair. You go back to the same cap space.
When there was no cap, the Colorado Avalanche did this with Peter Forsberg. I thought he played a couple games. I went back. He played 0 games.
Right.
Yeah, but
he did the exact same thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you don't get paid in the playoffs.
Well, no, but you're still worth the money you're paid normally.
Yes.
And I can see that it's an advantage for the Lightning.
If there was no cap, we wouldn't be talking about this. That's the funny thing.
I don't have a problem with what you're saying, Green. You're absolutely right. And during the regular season, you need to be able to give teams a chance to make up for guys who get hurt. But but for Kucherov to come back, they should still have to make an adjustment in the playoffs. Like they should still have to. Okay, if he's coming back now, it's not like he comes back on top of what we added.
No, that's it. You just move players out. You're like, okay, I won't take this guy, but here's my list of guys that are on my roster for the playoffs.
Right.
And that's it. Right. Problem solved. I mean, the Canadians, it was the exact same thing. I've not checked, but they went to get players when Gallagher and they signed Caulfield and all that. So the Montreal Canadiens might be a bit over as well. Of course, no one's going to complain because Gallagher is no Kucherov, but still.
Right.
So, I think that's something worth discussing. And if that would mean that the Canadians couldn't have Caulfield, that's still a big change.
As Karen points out, it would be an easy fix because just think about it in baseball, Russ, because we do this all the time. You finalize your playoff roster. It has nothing to do with money, but you got to have the right guys. I mean, you got to pick people that you're going to have. Why couldn't you do that in hockey, where you just
that's fair.
Here's my guys that I'm going to use.
No, that's fair.
It gets me under the cap. So
it feels like a loophole that no one thought about, and then now they just kind of gone with it. It's like, okay, that's
something. In every CBA, there are loopholes. There will always be loopholes.
Sure.
Well, those things are written by lawyers. It's their job to find the loopholes.
That's the idea. If you have lawyers, there's loopholes. That's just the way it is.
Well, I mean, even in this one, I mean, they've never corrected, which I think is a loophole, although Bill Daly told me that's not really a loophole, but I don't know why it isn't, that the college players can create their own free agency.
Right. Actually, one better. Philip Lindbergh's doing it a year early this year, Kev. He's actually found a loophole where he's doing it a year early.
Yeah.
And again, what I've been told as the answer to that is GMs don't care. They want the loophole because they want to have that chance at these extra players when they get that chance.
Yeah, unless it's theirs. But
I know.
That's true, though. The other one that I think, could, how far can you take it? So, right at the trade deadline, the Lightning of all teams
Mm-hmm.
finds a way, even though they're totally capped out and are going to end up with a $98 million playoff thing, finds a way to get David Savard by getting 3 teams, a third team involved. Well, what stops people from getting 5 teams involved?
Nothing.
You know, where everybody takes $1 million.
Actually, if you remember, Mike Hampton, at least 3 teams he was traded twice after he signed the deal with the Colorado Rockies, and at least 2 other teams assumed parts of his contract for the remainder of his contract. So it definitely could happen.
What this is the NBAization of the NHL, because the 3-4 team deal was part of the NBA for years. I mean, now they don't have the same hard cap that the NHL does, but I mean, I think that it's become necessary. I mean, Toronto did it, Vegas did it last year, the Robin Leonard deal. There were a number of teams that did it this year. It's reality. There's no way to stop it unless you're going to rejig the CBA. You're not going to stop it.
Well, I got news for you. I think David Savard may get re-signed by Tampa because Hedman will be the next guy that does this unless they pass a ruling over the summer. Hedman will probably not play.
He's hurt, right? Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, and you're right, Mike. I mean, I'm okay with that. That's different to me than what's happening with Kucherov, because the reason that is different is because even though you can use 5 teams or 6 teams or whatever, all those teams are getting something for that.
Exactly. Everybody's getting that an advantage.
Right. Yeah. There's a benefit. That to me is the same reason that I want to have I've always wanted to have this rule, like what I call the Ray Bork rule, where you can sign one expiring UFA that doesn't count on the salary cap at the trade deadline. I've always thought because when you have these,
do that though. You can't do it.
If you did, you could do it, because teams are stuck with that player that they cannot trade, and they're going to lose for nothing at the end of the year.
It's your fault if you mismanage the cap.
Well, you can say that,
Tampa
right?
did not mismanage the cap. They did what they needed to do with the cap.
Well, they did mismanage the cap. They just
they didn't.
But they just found a way around it. They fixed it.
Then they didn't mismanage it.
But if Kucherov isn't injured, they mismanaged the cap. Like that. But
they knew he was injured. That's the whole thing. So that's how they didn't mismanage.
No, they didn't.
They knew he
was injured when they put themselves in that position.
Right, they did not.
Right. No, if Kucherov had not had the surgery, they would have been forced to make the decisions that we talked about all offseason, trading Tyler Johnson or trading Killorn.
They tried to get rid of Johnson waivers twice as well.
Yeah, I mean, they would end up trading Palat, who was
right. But guys, there are players that tell teams 2 seasons in advance that they are playing hurt. And you always hear about guys that say, I finally had to get this operated on because I just couldn't play with it anymore. And I guarantee you they knew something was wrong with Kucherov.
They may have. If they did, then they really are guilty.
But I guarantee you they knew.
I think I know the answer to this, but I don't. I'm not confident about it at all. But I could make a good guess. But I'd love to. Maybe you guys have actually heard something about this. If, like, for example, if the Nashville traded Ryan Johansson and they used the the 3-team third man in rule, and they get a team. They got the Red Wings, so they kept 2, and the Red Wings took 3, and Seattle took 3, and they get Johansson, and then they play him 1 year at third line center, and then they got 3 years left, and then they buy him out. So if they buy him out, does that allow the Red Wings then to buy their salary out, or do they still have to just
the buyout percentage wise spreads equally around the 3 teams, because
it is bought out by all 3 teams?
Yes.
So, well, what I'm saying is that what would happen? You'd have to get agreement from all 3 teams.
I don't think you have to get agreement. I think it just happens, because I can't remember who it was, but there was a player that Dion Phaneuf, when he was traded from Ottawa to Los Angeles, LA bought him out. Ottawa had nothing to say about it. They just had the percentage of the buyout because they had a percentage.
Well, it's a wonderful deal for them. Yeah. So then Steve Yzerman just calls Ron Francis and said, "I just want to personally thank you."
Well, yeah.
Well, what if you don't have the money to buy a guy out? Like, I mean, that's like.
Yeah.
But that was the interesting thing about it. There was an update on the factors regarding Seattle expansion. They can't pick up a player in the expansion draft and immediately buy them out. They have to have that player hold on their roster for 1 year before they can buy them out. So they can't pick up somebody and immediately cleanse that salary. So
that's one good thing because they can almost do anything else.
Isn't that like the Brooks like? I want to talk about Hamilton for a second before we get into the Montreal, because we're gonna end with a good 20 minutes here about this other series. But the big rumor out today, of course, is being put out there that other teams are now allowed to talk to Hamilton's agent.
Yeah.
Which happens a lot more than is ever reported, right?
Yeah.
But they're out. But this is out there, and it makes sense to put it out there because if you're Carolina, you want all the teams to know that this is a possibility, right? So you get it out there, and everybody can talk to them. But then you're also hearing, Kev, like this, that this is going to be that there's a sign and trade possibility, which the people I talked to who were involved in, I talked to one person who was involved in actually talking to Hamilton, said that the sign and trade is not the thought here.
The thought is they wanted him to see what the market is,
right?
To show that they're not far off. Now, they may not be. That may not be the case. I mean, somebody might, pay.
Right.
So, I mean, it's such an odd market. So anyway, so if they send him out there and he finds out he can't get $9 million or $8.5 million for 7 or 8 years, then, they come back, they can still negotiate. But this is not a good sign.
No,
it's not. It's not.
No, it's not a good sign.
This is letting your wife sleep with somebody, right? Basically, is that what you're having?
Yeah, but I can see a lot of things. I can see a lot of teams having trouble signing their RFA because you're telling them the market is not what it usually is, and they don't necessarily believe you. So the move that the Canes are making here kind of makes sense. And in a way, I wouldn't even be surprised to see Montreal do the same with Danault.
Now,
because they don't agree with the money that he's worth and what he thinks, but they don't want to lose him.
As one GM said to me today, he said, just go through your cap friendly and tell me who can give him $8 million.
Yeah, right.
He said the list of teams that can give him $8 million are probably 3, and he probably doesn't want to go to any of those teams. So,
yeah, Ottawa, New Jersey, Columbus,
Buffalo, Seattle could. No. This is the thing. One of the reports, I don't remember who exactly said this. Said that he signed and trade so he could get the 8th year. He can't get He can't get it. Dreger was wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong. And also, really, as one GM said, in this economy, do you want to give anybody an 8th year?
No.
Like honestly, you'd rather not do that.
But yeah, the only way he could have gotten an 8th year from a different team was that he would be traded before the trade deadline. So the max you get from any team is 7 years, except for Carolina.
The players don't even want long-term deal right now because the economy is bad. So I see a lot of bridge deals being signed, really.
Now, I did hear something.
Kevin, that's why Taylor Hall's, they're talking to him at $6 million.
Right. And I did hear someone say to me, Kevin, that they thought that this was okay. You can talk to Hamilton. If you do agree to a deal with him, you owe Carolina a 2nd round draft pick. Something like that was going to play into it. I don't know if that there would be basically we've seen these negotiating rights being traded around before, but I've never heard it done the opposite kind of way. Where it's where you if you sign him, no going in before you sign him, you're going to have to give us a 2nd round pick because you talked to him ahead of time.
Yeah, I've not heard that.
So. Okay, interesting. I don't know if that's okay.
Well, let's just say this because as soon as I saw this report, I talked to Russ in the morning as we normally do for our pre-show confab. I said, "Boy, this just feeds into the narrative."
Yeah, you call it a cheapskate. I don't know. I don't know what their offer is to defend him, but I think it's entirely possible that the Carolina Hurricanes are being reasonable to the marketplace, but he thinks he's worth more. Now, saying that, I don't think this is a good sign. So
it's not a good sign. No, it's not. It doesn't. It's not like Hamilton's committed to the Carolina Hurricanes. That's the
and honestly, he should be. This will be his 4th team.
Yes.
And he's a young man, and they treated him better than the 2 previous teams.
100%.
True.
He's happier there. The coach loves him. No one is telling him to play differently. Everybody likes the way he plays. And
this is his one chance to cash in. One chance where he's at the top of his game. That's the only problem.
Yeah, no, and I understand all that. So he may choose to do that, but he's going to end up with a team that I think, if he wants to maximize his value with, that he doesn't want to play for. Like, I mean, could the Toronto Maple Leafs could use him, but can they give him $8 million, Mike?
They can't. They can give him $8 million if they traded Morgan Riley for prospects and draft picks. They would clear.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, but why would you do that? I mean,
because Morgan Riley's got a year left on his contract, and after that, he could be the Dougie Hamilton. He could be a free agent who they can't afford. So
they already have him. They're already paying him something. Like, and they can renegotiate with him, and he's better than Dougie Hamilton.
So would they rather have?
I'm not saying that
Riley for $8 million or Dougie Hamilton for $8 million.
I think the Leafs would rather have Riley because they know.
Well, yeah, I rest my case then.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying it was going to happen. I'm not saying it was likely to happen.
I understand, but if they move Nylander out, could that? I mean, then
Well, that's what I wrote about today.
Yeah.
With all the talk, and it's been Legion, Drager, Elliot Friedman, John Hoven, who's an insider, covers the Kings. Everybody's saying the Kings are going after 1 to 2 top 6 forwards, and they have $20 million in cap space, 10 of which was cleared off because of Kovalchuk and Phaneuf's buyouts and termination contract dropping off, and another $11 million dropping off next year with other contracts dropping off. And they're looking for top 6 forwards, and they've got a bevy of prospects and extra draft picks over the next 3 years that is a perfect fit for a team that is up against it, like the Leafs, like Tampa Bay, and a guy like Nylander makes perfect sense for the Kings because they're looking for a scorer, looking for somebody who's not a young guy, not a inexperienced guy. I mean, it may not happen, but I think the pieces fit, and plus the Leafs and the Kings have made 2 big deals over the last couple of years, and the lines of communication are very clear, and they've done deals before, which means likely they could do another deal again. I think it makes a lot of sense, but there's no guarantee it's going to happen.
That'll teach Nylander to play real hard.
Yeah, to be their best forward.
You work hard
to the locker room.
Trade to LA.
That throws a great message to the locker room for sure. There's no question about that.
It's not a bad place to end up, is it?
No, it's LA's a great place to end up. But at the same time, it's like, but you want to think your team would want you after you played really well.
It's not about wanting him. It's about affording him. This is the cap reality.
No, I get that, but I mean, there's other guys they
cannot pay 50% of their cap to 4 players. I mean, the last 3 years proved that.
Right. I know. I don't. But to me, if you do that, you have to get Hamilton. Like, you have to get somebody. You have to do something with that money. Like, you have to really do something smart with that money. Yes. And you have to get Hamilton, or you have to get yourself a really serious goalie or something like that you can actually do something with, right?
I mean, that's the talk that's out there. Is want to make them impact move of some sort.
Yeah, maybe what we're seeing again is that we're turning back the clock here, like the Colorado Avalanche with a great offensive team couldn't get going.
Right.
And the Islanders, who, don't have a superior defenseman, but have a lot of good defense, they're still rolling. The Montreal Canadiens didn't beat anybody with offense. They beat them with really dependable defense. Maybe, the way to go is just beef up the defense. Like, there's been a lot of wild, crazy suggestions that maybe the Seattle team would trade the number 2 pick as part of and players that they're on future draft picks to Buffalo, perhaps, to try to get Eichel, and that would give Buffalo Rasmus Dahlin and Power, and then they could also take Edvinsson, the Swedish defenseman. So that would be the core basis of their new team, is 3 just top-level defensemen.
Well, Edvinson's a longer-term project, though, than the other guys, but he could be a really good defenseman.
Here's a good segue.
Well, I got news for you. Buffalo is a longer-term project.
No, I know. I get it.
Here's a good segue into the series.
Their title.
Into the series preview.
Yeah.
4 teams in the playoffs right now. The cheapest goaltender is Varlamov at $5 million. All high-priced, well-regarded goaltenders, Vasilevsky at $9.5. Price at $10.5, Fleury at $7. even the backup in Vegas, Leonard, makes 5. So you've got established high-priced goaltenders and big mobile defense. All 4 of them. Now, I think some of them are better than others. Obviously, some are better offensively, some are better defensively. But that's the commonality of all 4 of them. And if you don't think that sends a message to other NHL teams about how to build your team, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, but that depends, Mike. I mean, that applies if you're building from the net out. If you've got your franchise player, who's the goalie, Carey Price in Montreal Sens, they spend so much money on the goaltender that they need to have the guys around him to support him, and then that's how they end up playing a suffocating defense with less attack. They wouldn't be like that if they had money to put up front, but they've put so much at the back that's how they have to play.
And I think
what ends up happening though, out there in the hockey world, and they're smarter than we are because they can identify apparently, the guys that are difference makers who don't on the surface look like difference makers. And I'll bring up our good friend Edmondson again. And here on this show, I remember seeing in the off season, people were acting like Montreal ended up with Bobby Orr. And I'm thinking, this guy is just a serviceable defenseman. Well, baloney. He was much better than serviceable.
Yeah.
Every time I watched them play, he was an impact, player. So, a lot of the hockey world, they sort of get the guys that, the same thing with the Carolina guy that the fan base doesn't really understand how good Slavin is. But
the only reason, Kev, that I knew about Edmondson is because when I started covering the Cup games, when he was in it with St. Louis, I realized, okay, you know what? This guy is better than I gave him credit for. So that's why when they signed him, I was like, this is a great signing because I understood how important he was to that team. But if I didn't cover those Cup games up close, I probably wouldn't have.
Russ, you and I talked about Edmondson in the press box in Boston. Yes. I remember very clearly we were like, that guy is way better than people think he is. I remember that whole thing and we having that discussion. Now, what's interesting to me, Kevin, and I think this does go into the series, is that obviously the name of the game is goalie. That's a given, right? And the 3 of the top 4 paid goalies are still playing, right? Which is crazy. But then the whole name of the game being defense, big defensemen. This is where I think people are missing the boat a little bit because these defensemen can look better in a better system than they are, and also I do believe obviously having a Hedman or whatever is an amazing thing, but Shea Weber's not there anymore. He's looking better now because of the fact that Montreal's playing a system and a solid defensive system like the Islanders play. That makes you look like you have better defensemen sometimes too. So it's a hard.
Well, I think it's always a combination of factors. I have interest in Petrie because I covered his dad. I covered the Detroit Tigers in baseball in the 80s, so I knew the dad. And so I've always paid attention to him. And I've noted at the start of this season that he had really improved since the last time I paid attention to him. Now, it happened last year and I just wasn't paying attention. But, I watched him and he wasn't the same kid that, struggled in Edmonton and everything else. And I think
he's not a kid anymore.
Well, no, he's not a kid. No, exactly. But he's not. He's better. So I think, Shea Weber doesn't have to do as much. And then they bring in Edmondson, who.
I think we could say the same about Devin Taves. He looked great in the bubble for the Islanders. He still looks great for Colorado.
I agree. Yeah, Devin Taves. He's a guy that because of their cap mess. Although now the rumor is that I think you told me this. Somebody told me this that Eric Johnson is going to wave.
Yeah, that's the chat room mentioned that. Now, Kareem.
Yeah.
Green, I want you to start with the Montreal series and give us your thoughts on this. So let's.
The Montreal series, I'm going to start by picking up where you left off and say that Canadians weren't playing the same system during the season, and Shea Weber looked bad / atrocious a lot of times. At the end, we knew that he was injured, but he hasn't been injured all season, and he struggled all season. However, when you get to the playoffs and you play a more disciplined, more suffocating defense, that he can do because that's his style of play, but also because the rule book is a bit less applied in the playoffs, and that helps.
That's true, yeah.
But you can't play like that for the whole season, so that's why when you're watching Weber in the regular season, you're like, yes, this isn't good. Then you get to playoffs and you're like, oh, there's Shea Weber. Where have you been? And for Petrie, it's a bit the opposite, actually, because he
that's what I kept
is an
saying.
attacking
Petrie did not look
defenseman,
good.
and he's really good all through the season. Then you get to the first round against the Maple Leafs, and Petrie's, not as useful as he was. He's still a great player, but he didn't put up tons of points against the Leafs.
He's a little shaky with the puck. There were times he was lacking confidence bringing the puck up the ice. That's what I know.
Exactly. So he's not been as good against the Leafs. He was good against the Jets, however.
Sure,
but now he's injured, so we'll have to see where that goes, because he's got 2 dislocated fingers, and he's had a special glove made, apparently, and he practiced with the team today, but with non-contact sweater. So that's going to hurt, because whatever happens, that means that Canadians are still going to try and roll 4 defensemen heavily, and then just give bits and pieces of ice time to good old Gustafsson and Romanov. So that's a gamble a little bit when you're rolling, and you've got Kulak, who has to play like 20 minutes if Petrie doesn't come back. Still, that being said, I think I can see the Avs pulling that one off, because I'm not sure how Vegas is going to act against that kind of suffocating defense. And I know that Vegas has a better attack, but they've not faced Carey Price yet. They haven't. Well, they've not faced a playoffs Price yet, because that's 2 different guys, just like Shea Weber.
Yeah.
And I'd also say about Weber and Price, to me, these guys are fast becoming the Avalanche Raymond Bourque.
Right.
I mean, they're getting to that age where they're not going to have a ton of chances to win, and they want to win. I mean, who's going to be more motivated on the other side? I mean, you've got Mark Stone, Jonathan Marchessault, guys like that who haven't won a cup yet, and you've got Fleury, who's got three rings already? The 3 or 4? 3, I think.
3, right?
So he's not going to have the same hunger as Price. So I can see playoffs Price really, really shining through, and that's going to be the first time he gets to play in a 3rd round, aside from 2 periods before he was injured.
Yeah.
Kreider. I think
right.
they're going to be highly motivated, and I think that if they manage to put their system forward and execute as they did in the first 2 rounds, they can do this. They have to shake off the rust as well tonight. But what was funny as well was that this past week, they wanted to make sure that they wouldn't, just relax too much and get their head out of the game. So the Canadians actually brought Bob Gainey to speak to the guys and tell them how he did stuff, how he kept in the right mind and all that. Well, that's cool, yes, but Marc Bergevin this weekend, when he spoke to the media, said, and there's something else about Gainey, but we want to keep that internally for now. And that made me think, well, is Gainey going to become the president of hockey operations? That would be a good move.
No, that would be a Canadians move. If I could just mention my 2 cents, I have to go a few minutes early because of an interview. I do agree with Corinne that, look, Montreal will be playing a different style of hockey than Vegas hasn't seen. But I do think Vegas has the kind of guys around that if they get punched in the mouth, they can handle it. Reeves, Pacioretty, Tuck. They have a lot of big guys. Nicholas Waugh. They have a lot of guys that with a lot of pushback. So if it turns into a pushback series, I think they are okay with that. And Fleury, for as long as Fleury plays like this, I think he can handle it too. I really think Vegas will win this in 6, but I do think the Habs will win some games here. But I don't see a path for the Habs winning this one, because I just think right now I think Vegas will have a little bit more offense than the Habs have to offer, and they could at least match them physically. I'll give the Habs the edge on defense, and I think it's a wash and goal. That's what I think.
All right, interesting.
We'll see, but you know what? I don't think it's possible for the Habs to actually lose in 6, because the 6th game is scheduled at the Bell Center on June 24th, which is Quebec's National Day. So they're not losing on that.
Every team can lose at home.
No, that's not.
I get what you're saying.
It'll make that loss so much sweeter.
No. You know what's going to happen that night? It's going to be Habs in 6. They're going to win that night. And then Quebec's favorite band has actually promised a live Facebook show to celebrate if that happens.
I love this kind of stuff.
That's the end of the script I want.
That's the end of the script you want. Absolutely. Kevin, your thoughts on the series?
Well, first thing, I had to start off with a story about Shea Weber, one of my all-time favorite stories. And I like it because it involves Peter Laviolette, who doesn't often provide good stories, as you guys are covering him.
Yes.
He's he's not a gifted orator and doesn't enjoy engaging with the media. But we were at an all-star game, and I was doing a big piece, a takeout on Shea Weber, and I went up to Peter and I said, Peter, I don't know. I know him reasonably well, so I knew he would at least be okay asking the question too. And I said, as you know, Shea Weber does not have good advanced stats. I don't know how much attention you pay to it. And he goes, I actually pay quite a bit of attention to advanced stats. I said, well, you know what it says about him. He goes, yeah, it says that he's not good defensively. When you read all that, he goes, but here's the problem I have. He said, when it's 2 minutes to go and I'm trying to protect the lead and I have all that knowledge in my head, what it says, I look down the bench and I say, I'm putting Shea Weber on here. Because I've been watching him too long,
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the struggles with advanced stats. And sometimes the eye test and the knowledge of, what he's capable of just influences. But I think Montreal is capable of winning this series because of their ability to put forth the defensive effort. But can they do it? I don't know. They've done it for 2 series. Can they do it for 3? And Vegas, I think one of their talents is survival skills. Like they can take early punches. They were trailed in that series, and they take the lead almost from Fleury, who's very unflappable. A lot of composure, doesn't lose his cool, gives up a goal. Seen it before, been here.
Yeah.
And the team does that as well. And I think Mark Stone's biggest contribution to that team was as a flag carrier. He picks that flag up and they get going. He wasn't good in some games, but he still carried the flag. And I thought the team kind of responded. So I'm going to take Vegas, but I'm not all that comfortable with it because I feel like Montreal could give them a very hard time. Like, always there's a team in the playoffs that just gets it together and plays a style that people have trouble handling. And that's been Montreal so far.
Yeah.
Well,
good, Mike.
Russ covered most of the points that I was going to cover, but I want to mix in what Corinne said about Game 6 because that may be a factor. So I think Vegas will win in 5. This is the thing. It's like I think Vegas and Montreal play very similar styles. I think Vegas is a bigger team up front. I don't think even though the Montreal defense has played really well, and I know for a fact watching them for 7 games against the team that I cover, I don't think anybody's better on either team than Alex Pietrangelo has played in these playoffs. He played fantastic against Colorado. He was a difference maker, especially in the last 2 or 3 games. He justified what they went through and what they spent on him in that deal. Now, anything can happen. Does Fleury have a 2012 flashback and he thinks he's facing Ilya Bryzgalov and all of a sudden he's got a 5-hole the size of that a Mack truck could go through? Sure. But
could have a 2010 flashback when he played against Montreal and had a lot of trouble.
Yes. But but based on the way he's played in these playoffs, he's been lights out. And I'm not taking anything away from Carey Price, but because he's been really good too. But I just think Vegas is the better team. So I will heed Corinne's advice here and go with Vegas in 5, only because I would be Vegas in 6, and that would be embarrassing and it would be downtrodden to the members of the province of Quebec.
It's funny. I looked back at the Toronto Montreal series, and Russ is the only person who took Montreal. Remember,
please.
But I said in our podcast, I wanted to make sure I said this because I went back and listened to that. I said that this series to me is Toronto in 5 or Montreal in 7, but I'm going to go with Toronto in 5, and that's where I went because I feel the same about this series. It's Vegas in 5 or Montreal in 7, and I feel that way because. And it was 1 goal away from being Toronto in 5. That's where it was.
One goal away from being Toronto in 6.
Right. So, but when I look for Achilles, Vegas is a better team. Like there's no question about it. They're deeper. They're faster. Fleury and Price kind of cancel each other out in my mind, even though Price is legendary. Fleury is just on fire. I think that. You have to, in order for Montreal to lose, you have to find an Achilles heel with with the Vegas Golden Knights, and there is one. And I feel that the one that we've and Dallas showed it last year in the playoffs, that Vegas can get very cold and frustrated when they run into a hot goalie.
Yeah.
And the issue here is, to me, that is the one thing I keep looking at. And this also happened against Minnesota. Remember, Vegas couldn't score for a bit this year in the playoffs. It happened in Dallas. This is how Dallas beat them. And I really do feel, I mean, you're going against the ultimate get inside your head goalie in Carey Price.
Well,
that to me is an issue.
Well, the thing is, the common thread between Minnesota and Dallas is they were being stymied by what most people would define as an average goaltender. Khudobin is an average goalie. So is Cam Talbot. Carey Price is not an average goalie. He's one of the best in the business. If they're not prepared to be patient and wait for their opportunities against him, then they don't belong there. And I think they're going to be intelligent enough and experienced enough to know that these games are probably going to be 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, something like that, and it's going to require them to be patient to be able to win.
But they haven't been, and then when these teams have played each other, and this is not as good a Montreal team, but as good a Vegas team. This is the only team that Vegas hasn't beaten twice in the NHL. Like Vegas has one win in the regular season against the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, but they play them twice a year for 3 years.
They've only played them 6 times.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying, but you know what? The other thing is interesting. Each team has scored 25 goals in that series in 6 games. That's 4 goals a game per team. These teams have not played low-scoring games when they play each other, and I think the reason for that is that they actually. Well, it's not the playoffs. These are all, and listen, it's the past, but. I'm trying to look for commonality here, and to me, I've been saying for the last 2 years that what I like about the Canadiens, and I said this when they played the Flyers last year, is they play like the Vegas Golden Knights, that they play fast hockey. That's what I've been saying forever. So you're looking at 2 teams that are playing very fast hockey against each other. That to me, we're bad goalies, Mike, but that makes my point even more so.
Not bad goalies,
not bad goalies, but not legendary goalies. But that makes my point even more. You can't be patient against Carey Price. Patience is not what was going to with Carey Price. You have to throw everything on net, everything at the goal, everything all the time. You're going to score weird goals against Carey Price. You're not going to score straight out goals. And this is the problem. They tried to be too fancy against Khudobin. They tried to be too fancy against Talbot, and they even tried to in that first game against Grubauer. And
maybe I used the wrong word, but what I think that they lost their cool against Minnesota and against Dallas because they were being stymied by what they perceived as average goaltenders. Carey Price is not an average goalie. I
don't think it was stymied by an average goalie. I think they were stymied by a hot goalie, Mike. I think that's what the team thinks. They don't think those goals are hot. They just think there's a hot goalie. And Carey Price is the ultimate hot goalie. Like to me,
going back to what you said, Ekto, about Montreal being a goal away from being beaten by Toronto in 5. Thing is, since then, they finally bought into the system that Sean is trying to get them to play, and they've applied it to perfection. So that's not the same team. I'd taken Leafs in 7 in the first round based on what I was seeing in the regular season, and that doesn't apply anymore. They're a completely different team. Even Bergevin said it this weekend. I don't know what's happening out there. I don't know what changed, but we've got a unified team that's having fun playing hockey right now, and that's true. They're not the same as they were at the start of playoffs.
They've won 7 games in a row. I mean, they're every team's happy when they're winning. It's just
I think Montreal, it could be the Blues of this playoffs.
Yeah.
Like the Blues weren't the best team in the NHL, but they were right. They had all the momentum in the playoffs. They were playing well. They felt good about themselves. They were confident. Always there's a team like that, and Montreal, could be that team. We don't know.
And Boston should have won that Stanley Cup final against the Blues. Boston outplayed the Blues.
Yeah, no, but the Blues had a lot going, and I'd rather be, be confident and feel good about yourselves and going into a final than being the most talented team. If you're going well and you got momentum, we've seen that way too often in the NHL.
It's such a team sport.
I just add actually that the last 2 times that the Canadians won the Cup, they weren't meant to win it either. 93 and 86, they weren't meant to win it. They weren't the favorites. But it just happened. Yeah. And it feels a little bit like that in the sense that in 93, when they won, The Islanders eliminated the Penguins, but they lost Pierre Turgeon in the process, and that kind of opened the way for Montreal. And this year, it's hard not to say that JT going down didn't help. Scheifele taking himself out didn't help. There's a lot to consider here. And I think that yes, Montreal has had luck. You can't deny that.
Every team that wins the Stanley Cup has luck.
And I can't remember who Los Angeles eliminated in '93.
I think it was your Leafs.
All right. So, but saying all I said, I'm making my case for Montreal in 7 because I honestly feel like I'm still going to say it's Vegas in 5 or Montreal in 7.
You got to pick one, Nick.
I'm going with Montreal in 7, and I did it. I wrote about it on my blog, and I'm going with it just because I feel like Kevin said there's always a team, and Montreal. There's no team that can get more of a blessed type feeling than the Montreal Canadiens in my mind. Like if there's a team of destiny, when I was a kid, it was always the Montreal Canadiens. So it's like it's not weird for me to think it's weird for me like the Blues is a team of destiny, but it's not weird for me to think of the Canadiens as a team of destiny. So. To me, I think that the Canadians, I mean, I remember I was always so proud of them. They were my second favorite team. I was always so proud they won a Stanley Cup in every decade, which they did through the 90s, right? But then they didn't. So anyway, that's my pick. We'll see. I mean, I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be a incredibly interesting series. Both these Final Four, I think, are really good series. I think we're in great shape here. So. That's all the time we have for today, guys. But everybody have a wonderful weekend. Kevin, thank you so much, as always.
Well, we already had a wonderful weekend.
Right. It's Monday. I'm losing my mind. I'm sorry. Listen, when my wife says that I will do something incredibly stupid every 48 hours, that was mine. That was my thing I just did right there. But she says I do mostly good things. All right. Remember, without the buzz. It's just hockey. Enjoy your Monday night. We will talk to you tomorrow.